Greetings and welcome back to Christian News and Views. And this is now episode 145. And this is Friday recap. So we're going to get started here. On Monday, the subject was the United States and China trade talks. The Trump administration in China announced plans to cool simmering tensions by simultaneously slashing each other's tariffs. Now, they had reached a rather high level, and it was getting almost ridiculous when you look at it in one way, but it was also necessary because you had to get China's attention. China has its own agenda, and it had to adjust that agenda to be able to eventually get some kind of an agreement with Trump, with America. And that apparently has happened. As days go by, we'll get more and more details, but it sounds like a very good thing going on. So it does sound good, economically speaking. But it's important that we understand something, folks, here. This is a pause. They've made a temporary agreement to they slashing the tariffs. So that's to bring them both to the table, and they can sit down and look at one another in the eye and come to some kind of workable agreement between the two countries, a long-term agreement. So that's the thing that the next step, and it's not guaranteed that any kind of trade agreement will take place, but it is encouraging. One of the things that I would personally like to see is it goes beyond mere economics and touches upon human rights. This might be an opportunity where we can get them to look at human rights, how they treat their own people. They don't do a very good job of it. That's that in itself may have to require some more pressure than what we can do through just economics. I don't know. On Tuesday, we looked at the episode was about the Hamas. They released an American who had been kidnapped and held prisoner by them for several years now. And it was the Trump administration. I don't know what they did in the background or what Israel did in the background, but the Hamas has found it necessary to do this. They don't do anything that of this nature unless there's something that they benefit from, that they're trying to get a benefit from. So we don't know how good this is. We'll just have to take them on their word, which isn't too good, but we will accept it for that. And that's just, goodwill is always a good thing. But the article also mentioned that something more important than that, I think, and that is that President Trump's goal is to end the war between the Jews and the Arabs. Now, he's focused on the Gaza war, that particular war, and he can possibly bring that part of it to an end, at least a temporary, maybe even a longer term end, but not a permanent end. The actual war between the Arabs and Jews, which springs up constantly, there'll be times of peace and times of war, but it all goes back to Abraham and his son Ishmael, and then later his son Isaac. There had to be a split, and that split took place. But because of, Abraham had listened to his wife, who was looking at other countries and so forth, other people, and how they solved their problems, didn't have any children, so she came up with what was accepted practice back then, and that was for him to have a child by way of one of her maids. And all the trouble that now exists between the Jews and the Arabs can be traced back to that. And so that's not going to be resolved until Christ himself returns. On Wednesday, excuse me, on Wednesday, the episode covered the naming of the Gulf of America. As a result of the decision by the World Court, which stated that the land underwater belonged to individual nations. Now, your media has been pointing out, they've been kind of pointing at his President Trump's ego and making it seem like this was just an ego trip on his part. No, there's hard facts here, a world court decision, which infects countries all over the world, including America. And even though we may not recognize the world court, that decision still impacts us. And so this is a legal action because that land under the water there, as part of that land, belongs to America. And that is the part that has the name Gulf of America, not the whole Gulf, but that particular area. And it belongs to the United States. That's why it's called the Gulf of America, a very legal thing. In that same article, it then talked about Greenland and Canada. In the case of Greenland, we had a case of they have minerals in which the United States wants to have access to. This is a big thing these days. Countries all over the world wanting to have access to these rare minerals, and Greenland has them. And so that's why the United States is interested there. Why Trump has talked about buying Greenland. Don't know if it's for sale or if it can be bought, but that's the reason for it. In the case of Canada, it's more of a defense because of Russia being on the other side there. They can come right over Canada to hit the United States. And so Greenland or Canada is actually part of, think of it as part of your buffer zone, if you want, of defense. We already have a treaty with Canada, and I don't know what in addition can be added. I don't believe that they're going to become the 51st state, but I do believe that eventually they will come to some kind of an agreement, trade and defense mixed together. So this has never been about Trump's ego, despite what the papers have said. It's been about some legal moves, some mineral rights, defense, things of this nature, which are the areas of interest for your different countries and so forth like that. Hopefully some kind of trade agreement can be reached with both Greenland and the United States and Canada. So we'll just have to see how that all works out. On Thursday, we had the Bible Talk. Now, in Bible Talk, I began a series on the book of Revelation. And one of the first things I pointed out is the title. There's all sorts of titles out there for that book. But the one that really matters is the one that's very first verse, very first words of the first verse, the revelation of Jesus Christ. There is your title right there. In this episode, I laid out the historic past leading up to the writing of Revelation. And I did it in a very brief form. You can follow up and dig deeper if you want by just giving you a brief history, a brief foundation, if you will, for this study. And then I began by discussing the different methods of interpreting the book. There's only one method that we will use, and that's called the futurist. This looks at the Bible, and there's a three-point view. There's the past, the present, and the future. And so the Bible, actually in Revelation 1:19 gives us that. And so we are able to take a look at that book and discuss things. And that's what we're going to be doing in today's ahead for Bible Talk. And I'm looking forward to it. And I hope you are too. It's not going to be in depth. I don't have the time for that, but it will be like a sort of like an overview and give you an idea. And hopefully it will give you a taste for what that's all about. It'll give you a taste for reading prophecy, history. This is history pre-written. This is history that's in the future, but someday will be history. So hopefully you have liked this channel. And if you do, I also hope that you subscribe. If you haven't done so yet, I would, right about there, encourage you to subscribe to this channel. And if you do, I encourage you, or rather, no, I promise you, I will do all in my power to inform you, encourage you, and inspire you, in this, particularly in Bible Talk, but in every episode. That's my goal. Do I succeed? That's where you come in. You decide that on your own. Don't forget, you can always make comments, and when you do, make sure that you give me why you disagree or why you agree. Either way, and really helps if you put in the reasons, not only the reasons, but if there's scripture involved, what that scripture is. I do insist that be King James. If it be another version, I will not feel obligated to answer to that. And by the way, I will try to reply either in the comment section or in a future episode. Well, that's it for today, and I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.